Hello and welcome to our Crafting and Christ Kit tutorial for January, where we're going to be doing this adorable embroidery sign hoop kit. So what we're going to be using from the kit is I have got my embroidery hoop here. I've got my backing that we'll need. This is the part that we're going to be decoupaging. I've got one of the napkins from the kit. I'm going to be using the hymnal for the tutorial today. And then I've got the little heart bead. I've got three of the little, the cross bead, three of the little hearts. I also have the little tag here. I'm not going to be using the coaster for this tutorial, but I am going to be using the string. And then a few other things that I've got is I have ruby chalk paint. And this is just Hello Hobby. I think I got this at Walmart. And then I've got the Waverly chalk in ink. I'm going to be using this to distress the edge of the napkin because we're putting a square on a circle. So we're going to have a little bit extra space. That's how we're going to use to cover that up. And then I've also got my Mod Podge. I've got my brushes and water. I've got my glue gun. I'm going to go ahead and turn that on and get it going here. Hot glue gun. And I do have the heat gun. We might use that to speed things up as we move along here. But if this is the first time that you have watched, my name is Melanie. I'm the founder of Christian Craft Paper, where we make all types of crafting paper and supplies for women who love the word. So if you love Jesus and crafting, you're in the right spot. Okay, gonna get my scissors here. So the first thing that we're gonna do, I'm actually gonna use this as is. We're gonna decoupage right on here. I'm not gonna do a background color because the natural wood color is it's light enough. I don't think we're gonna have any issues with the napkin. So we're not going to go ahead and we don't need to put any background on that, but we are going to come over it with some of that chalk paint. Now, if you haven't seen one of our tutorials before, you may be wondering why our napkins are only printed on the one side. And that is because we custom print all of our napkins. All of our napkins are our designs. We custom print them here in the US. And so because of that, we're only able to print the front side of the napkin at this time. Debating on painting that or not. Well, I might just do this on the fly. We'll see what we end up with. So what we're going to do is we're going to decoupage this to the actual wood circle here because this is going to be our image for our sign. So we only need the first layer of this napkin, and I got the last one there. I'm going to have to try again to get the first. We're just going to want to gently separate them. And how you're going to know when you have just the top layer is it's pretty much see-through. Where if we had the second layer and the top layer, it's not quite a see-through. So that's how you know that you've gotten the first layer. Now, because this is what we call like a full print napkin, meaning there's ink on all of the napkin, you do have to be a little bit gentle when you're separating it. We don't want that to tear. If it starts sticking on you, I kind of like to go around the edges and just keep working it towards the middle. It looks like we're going good here, so I'm just going to keep going there. And then this is the part that we're going to be working with. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to decoupage this right on to our wood sign. Now, you can see here that we're going to have some bleed through of the sign showing. And that's where we're going to come in with that black paint. And we're going to fill in those spots because the napkin has some black paint edging right here. So it's going to work really well. So what I like to do is center it the best I can. I kind of want to make sure I have the same amount of wood showing through on the top and the bottom and the sides so that I don't have to have a big spot of black coming in on either spot. You could also push your wording all the way to the top if you wanted to, and then fill in more on the bottom if you want that look. Actually, we might go a little bit higher on the top because I'm noticing on the bottom there's not as much black, so I can take this up a little higher. I do want my hymn title to show, so I want to make sure I don't go too far on that. And then what I'm going to do, Actually, I'm just gonna put, I tend to be a little heavy-handed with the Mod Podge, so I'm just gonna put some on this little plastic card here and work from that. If I try and if I try and just squirt it onto the wood, I'm telling you, if you've watched any of my tutorials, I like to just goop it on there, and sometimes I get, actually almost all the time, I get way too much. So we're just doing a light coat on here. I do have it held with my hand, so it's not moving because I did have it straight on where I wanted it. I want to make sure my Mod Podge goes all the way out to the edge, and then I do want to put it down while it's still wet. So I'm just going to take a light feathering, work from the center out. And then I'm going to come back, take the paper back the other direction, and now we're going to work this way. Now we do want to get the Mod Podge all the way up to that edge that we did before. I'm just going to keep working this out. I'm going to probably do this section and put it down, and then I'll do the next section. I do have a fan on in here, so it will tend to want to dry on me quickly. It is winter. We're here in Arizona, and we're having the hottest winter ever. So, yeah, we just barely turned our heat on, but like right now, it's hot. I mean, it's cooler right now because it's night, but as far as temperature outside during the day, it gets toasty in here. I like to leave the fan on when I'm doing these tutorials because it does get hot in here with all these lights. Okay, so that's I got a little speck of something. I had glitter in here. I tried to clean it up before I did this tutorial, but you know how glitter is. It just kind of sneaks in and never goes away. Okay, so again, light feathers. I've got it down all the way around there. Now, what we can do is we can take, if you have Saran wrap, you can do this. You can use a plastic bag. I happen to have some parchment paper in here, so I'm just going to use that. And we can use this to push out while it's wet any of the wrinkles. Now you can also hit this with the iron if you want it, once it's dry, if you want it completely flat. I'm not going to do that today just because I like to do these tutorials only using like the basic supplies that people probably have on hand. Not everyone may have a small iron to do that with. So that side was just coming back up. So I do want to make sure all my edges are down. I think it was just that one side. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put my brush in the water. So we're going to let that sit. The other thing that you are going to need is either a sanding block. So I use this finger sander. You can also use a fingernail file if you don't have that, or a sanding block or a piece of sandpaper. We're going to use that after this dries to do the edges. But for right now, we're just going to let this sit. And the next thing I'm going to want to do is, I'm really debating if I'm going to want to paint this frame or not. I'm just going to grab a plate for these because the mat does protect my desk, the Surface Saver mat I have on here, but I'm going to be going back and forth with these different colors, and I don't want to wait for the paint to dry because I have a tendency, if the paint is wet on here, it gets on my project. So I'm just going to take the ruby red, and we're going to paint these little beads here. Let me get another paintbrush. Trying to find the right size here. So I'm just going to take the red and I'm going to hit these, because I just want a little pop of color on these. You could leave them natural. You could also paint them black or any other fun color. You could mix and do a pink, a red, and a white. Really, whatever you feel. Good news is we just have to paint the front because the back is going to be glued. I'm not going to see that part. However, on the cross, I think I am going to paint the sides as well. Just because the cross is so much thicker, I think you might see it from the different angles. So we'll go ahead and just give a light coat to the sides as well. Now these are beads, the crosses, so there's actually like a little hole in there. You could string it on the little twine that we're going to use, but all right, so there's that. And then I think I am going to paint this. Just so I have the tie-in between the beads and the actual sign. So we're just going to take a nice light coat all the way around the hoop. Now, one thing I love about the chalk paint is it's going to dry really easy, or really quickly, I should say. So we can just do one light coat. It's going to cover really well. And we'll do the back too, so we get a nice finished look. And then we will do the inside because you will see the inside around the hem. Now, when we get to this part, we are going to want to do very careful around the fixture here so that it doesn't look all messy around the metal. So I'm just going to freehand this. You could tape it as well. All right, so again, we're just going to freehand around our metal here. We're going to come back and do the other side here. All right, now when we get to these little beads, we can go ahead and just paint right over them. All right, I think we have got everything painted red, so just double check the insides because we definitely don't want any red showing on our framing part of the sign. So we'll just go back, and if you've missed any spots, you can just come back and hit it. All right, so we're going to let those sit over here and dry a little bit. We're going to switch colors, and I think I am going to come back and hit our little tag here with some plaster. So this is plaster in the Waverly. It's kind of like an off-white. It always wants to close really tight. So I'm just going to hit just the front side of this with some of that plaster. Now you do want to make sure that your paint, like I have some red paint right there. So I do want to make sure I don't get this in the red. I'm going to hold it and then I'm just going to paint the front. I'm going to come back and I'm going to dry brush this as well when we do the black. So I do age it a little bit, but I'm just hitting the front. There we go, with just a little bit of the plaster. I hit it with just a little bit more. It seems like the wood is what we call a little bit thirsty. It is soaking up the paint a little bit, so make sure I don't have any red on my brush. I'll come through here and hit this again. All right, we're just going to let that dry with our other stuff that's drying there. Okay, so perfect. We've got all of these drying. Now we're going to come back here, make sure we don't have any, I do have some paint on my hands, but it is dry because I don't want to get any of that red on here that we don't want. And we're going to come back with our sander and we're going to sand the edges and then we're going to deal with that. We're going to cover up. So when we're sanding the edges, we want to make sure we're sanding down and away. We're not going back and forth because you'll tear your design up. We're only pushing on the way down. And that's going to help us get this really nice edging. I'm going to do it all the way around. There we go. So now we have our sign is completely done there. As far as the decoupage. Now we're going to come in and do this edging here. So I'm going to take my ink, my Waverly chalk and ink. And for this part, we do want to get, this one's kind of big. I wish I had if you have a smaller dry brush, that would be best. This one is a little big, but we're going to make it work because that's what I have. All right, we're going to put the paint on another just paper plate here so we can pour it out. We don't need a lot of paint, so I just need to get like a little blob here. Ooh, that wants to be a lot of blob. Just a little kiss. This is ink and it is thick. Like I barely need any of this. Okay, so dabbing, and we don't want a ton on the brush, okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to come over here and we're going to take this and we're going to start working it. So you can take as much as you need. Really, we want the concentration on the edge because we're filling in that spot. But then we're also going to work it around the other edges too, so that it doesn't look like that's the only edge that needs covered. So again, you're barely putting your brush in this, and then you're really dabbing the excess off. So you just want to come into it a little bit thicker when you get to these spots that need covered in, like so. And if you want it to look more uniform, you can just come back in with more of it and work your way in. So basically, this is just kind of our cheat to cover up the fact that the napkin's a square and we're putting it on a round sign. But it does help that this napkin already has that feel to it anyway, because we're just working with that and just kind of backfilling it. Okay, great. Now, if you want to get a little bit more, and again, make sure you don't have a lot on it, but you could come through here and just hit it with a little bit. We don't want to get too much. I'm probably going to leave it just like that, but you can see how that's kind of really built in those edges. So you can't even tell that there was stuff on the edge. And see, even this one is lighter than that one, and it almost looks more natural. So don't feel like you have to go all the way in with that ink, the ink color. Okay, we're going to let that dry. Then we're going to come back and we can put our frame back together now. So we're going to put this little guy over here And we're going to go ahead and put our frame back together because we're actually not going to be using this in the traditional way. Now you will have to, hopefully I'm going the right way here. You will have to unscrew it more to get it in because we did put paint on it. So, all right. And I'm going to just lay that down and screw it back. Now you can make sure it's flat by using your surface. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do, I just wanted to kind of show you what it's going to look like here. So we're going to put it on like this. But before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to place my beads. I missed a little spot of red there. This is the OCD me. I'm going to come in here and hit this little spot. Oops. Missed the tiniest little spot right here. Now you can come back and sand this if you want it to look a little more roughed up. I'm actually going to leave it just the way that it is. But the next thing I need to do is figure out where I'm going to have my little decorations. So I'm kind of thinking I'm just thinking maybe to the side, something like that. Kind of thinking something like that is what I'm going to go for. A little symmetrical. And so I'm going to get everything lined up here with my surface saver. Again, this is just sitting here. We don't have this glued on yet. We'll do that last, but I'm going to take my little beads and I'm going to line it up. So I would just pick one of the bars of music if you're using this particular napkin and just kind of line it up that way. Just going to pick a little dab of glue. And I think I'm just going to go the middle of this bar. I'm just using the actual music bars as my guide for spacing and for how far right to put it. Okay, and then I'm going to show you on the back. What we want to look for on the back is basically it's just going to be the center ring that it's going to attach to, okay? So the easiest way to do it is probably going to hit the four corners of this. And we're going to come back and you're just going to want to make sure that you have it centered. That our center is here with the center of the design. And if you want to go all the way around, you can. But I just hit the four corners just to make sure that it was easier, like my glue, so my glue didn't dry on me on the way around. So we do have some glue strings here. I'm going to have to like take away. Okay, and then the last thing that we have is we have our little thing of jute for our bow. And then we also have our little tag here. So I am gonna, I wanted to take, I already put the dry brush in the water. I did want to take the dry brush and hit this. I don't have as good of one. I really like that one because it's very bushy. All right, this one is similar, smaller. Oh, I forgot, I still have the ink over here. So I'm just gonna come back with my ink, and ideally that other dry brush is better, but This one is a smaller brush, but kind of has the same feel, but I'm going to have to take like a really light hand with this because I don't want it to be all black. I'm just trying to get some of that aging, but not like a ton of it. Like that's it. I wouldn't do any more than that. Now you could take stamps to this. You could take a Sharpie, which I forgot to grab before I went in here. I do have a pen. So we'll see if this is, I don't have the best handwriting, and I would do this with stamps or a Sharpie. But I just have a pen. So we're going to do a pen. And I'm going to show you that having a pen works just as good as anything else. So I'm going to go ahead and see how much my little bow is going to be. So I'm going to use this to make a bow. You could do, there's a bunch of different ways you could do. You could do this around, you could do all different things. I'm going to make a bow with it. I just have my mini bow dabber here. So that's just going to help me to keep all the pieces here. You do need to have one piece in the middle first before you go back and forth on it. It's just going to hold the pieces for me as I cross them back and forth. You could do this without the bow dabber too. Just lay it down on your counter and do it. I just have it here, so I'm going to just use it to hold everything for me. So I'm going to just keep going back and forth with what I have here. And then you'll keep the tails as long as you want the tails to be on your bow when you're done. And I've seen people do this similar, but just wrapping it around their fingers. I am not that talented. Okay, so I think that's as close as we're going to get with having tails to work with. So I'm just going to take this. That we did it. And again, if you don't have the bow dabber, you just lay them out like this on you. These aren't squirrely like some of the ribbons we usually work with. So you can just loop it without this. Just on your mat, you could. Okay, so I am going to do a double just to make sure that it doesn't go anywhere. And if you don't want those strings, you could cut them off. I'm actually going to leave them. And then you can decide where you want it. So I am actually going to blow this kind of underneath it. I got to figure out how I'm going to, because I do want to make sure that we can still see what's going on there. So I'm probably going to tuck this up there first, and then I'll glue the thing on top of it. So I'm just going to add the glue right there where I want my John 3:16. And then I'm going to come in. And you could actually use one of these hearts too for the center of your bow. I'm going to come in and put that right at the end there. Now, the other thing that we might want to do is you could hang it from the actual hook, not the twisty thing, I guess it is. But you may want to keep a little bit of your string which I don't have it in here, but take a little bit of your string or some other jute to make a loop up here so that you can hang it from that. But that is our John 3:16 embroidery hoop Valentine's sign. So cute. So if you do end up making one of these signs, I'd love to see what you make. You can share on social media and just make sure you tag at Christian Craft Paper if you're using our projects, or go ahead and share in any of our groups. We have the private membership group for the kit clubs, and then we also have our free community, the Christian Craftaholics, that you're welcome to share any projects that you make in there. So that's it for today. And until next time, happy crafting.